She said I was too small to protect her. Now she won't stop holding on to me. The first time I saw her, she was glowing, literally. Emerald skin, eyes like binary stars, and hair that shimmered like photon trails through hyperspace. I had been hired as a pilot, not a mythologist, but standing on the bridge of the vigilant eclipse with this creature, I started to wonder if space had finally cracked open and let a goddess crawl through the seams. Her name was Seraphine Vey, a Xerillian warden of the fifth moon, whatever that meant. I was Ryan Cade, human ex-freighter captain, and currently regretting my life choices as she knelt on the floor in front of me, staff in hand, demanding, "Show me your weapon." I coughed. "You mean my blaster, right?" She tilted her head. "Of course. What else would I mean?" The pause stretched long enough for the ship's AI to clear its throat over the intercom. A neat trick, considering it didn't have one. "Captain Cade," it said dryly, "I detect a 78% chance you're about to embarrass yourself." Seraphine smiled faintly, like someone who'd just discovered sarcasm was edible. "You look smaller than I expected for a warrior." "That's the lighting," I said. "Human males grow an extra inch in low gravity." She raised a brow. "Where precisely do they grow it?" I decided the deck plating was suddenly fascinating. 5 hours earlier, I'd been hauled out of a bar on Vega 9 by 2 galactic security officers who said I'd been volunteered for a diplomatic escort mission. I assumed they'd made a clerical error. Then they showed me Seraphine's transmission. Her planet had requested a human pilot, specifically me, to navigate her to a peace summit. Either she had a terrible sense of humor, or my ex had started a rumor I was good with complicated women. Now here she was, studying me like I was a malfunctioning droid. "So," I said, trying to break the silence, "you ever flown with a human before?" "Not one who survived," she replied, dark humor. "Fantastic." I was beginning to like her. Our journey started with routine jump checks, thrusters aligned, nav plotted, snacks hidden in the co-pilot's compartment. Seraphine stood near the viewport, gazing out at the nebula fields. She didn't wear armor exactly, more like ceremonial gold lattice that looked scientifically impossible and mildly distracting. Every time she moved, it caught the starlight, and my brain forgot basic words. "Stop staring, Ryan," the AI whispered privately through my earpiece. "I'm not staring. I'm evaluating her tactical balance." "You're evaluating gravitational pull, perhaps." "Shut up, Elle." Recorded. I sighed. Space hated me. Seraphine finally turned around. "Your ship's core hums out of rhythm," she said. "Is it wounded?" "She's just old," I replied. "Like me, I do not believe that. You seem resilient." She leaned closer. "Small, but resilient. I couldn't help it." I laughed. "You have no idea how many times I've heard that." Her expression softened, confused by my amusement. "You laugh at insult?" "Only when it's accurate." She considered that, then smiled. It was the kind of smile that made you forget oxygen was optional. "Perhaps humans are stronger than they appear." Halfway through our first jump, turbulence hit. Cosmic radiation flares, nothing unusual except one of the reactors overloaded. Sparks erupted. The deck shook. "Hold on!" I shouted, gripping the console. Seraphine didn't hold on. She glowed brighter, raised her staff, and the air shimmered. Energy wrapped around the reactor core like a second skin. Power levels stabilized instantly. I blinked. "You had just fixed my ship with magic?" "Quantum field manipulation," she said. "A simple trick." "Simple trick," I muttered. "Back home we call that not dying," she smirked. "You see? I am protecting you already." "Protecting me? I thought I was your bodyguard." "You?" She laughed, a sound like chimes in 0G. "You are too small to protect me, human." "Funny," I said. "People used to say that before I saved an entire freighter convoy from pirates. And yet, here you are, hiding behind me. She wasn't wrong." I'd ducked behind the console during the explosion. I straightened, trying to look heroic. "Tactical positioning," I explained. "Cowardice," she corrected gently. I grinned. Same thing, different manual. We drifted for hours afterward, recalibrating systems. The AI played old Earth music to fill the silence, something jazzy. Seraphine listened, fascinated. "This melody," she said, "is intimate. It's called Blue Moon. Humans used to play it when they wanted to look mysterious. And does it work? Sometimes. If the lighting's good, she stepped closer, inspecting me like I was an artifact. You hide much behind humor. Humor's how we survive, especially around people who glow. Her gaze softened again. I think I understand. Do you? I asked, leaning forward slightly. Yes. Her voice dropped to a whisper. You are terrified? I blinked. Of what? Of caring. That shut me up. She smiled, satisfied, then walked away, hair trailing light like comet dust. The AI sighed in my ear. Captain, it said, I am 92% sure you are developing feelings. Impossible, I said. She's a space sorceress. Correction. You are 100% doomed. Later that cycle, I found her meditating in the cargo bay. The starlight poured through the observation deck, painting her in green and gold. I didn't mean to interrupt, but she looked up before I could retreat. Come, she said. Sit. I hesitated, then obeyed. The deck was cold against my palms. You do not meditate? She asked. I tried once, I said. Fell asleep. Woke up to my crew drawing mustaches on me. She frowned slightly. That sounds disrespectful. It's tradition. She tilted her head. Humans are strange. We get that a lot. We sat there quiet for a while. I could hear the hum of the engines, the faint vibration of infinite space beyond. Then she said, You risked much coming here. Why? I didn't have much of a choice, I admitted. They said the mission was important. Peace treaty, galactic politics, yada yada. And if it were not important, then I guess I'm just a guy trying not to get atomized. She studied me again, that unnerving gaze that saw right through sarcasm. I think you are more than that, Ryan Cade. Careful, I said. You'll ruin my reputation. She smiled faintly. Your reputation, I suspect, is already quite complicated. Hours turned into days. Between jumps, we traded stories. Hers full of prophecy and cosmic destiny, mine full of bar fights and broken autopilots. She teased me for my primitive tools. I teased her for carrying a staff in the age of photon blasters. Somehow, it worked. Once, while fixing a coolant leak, she crouched beside me and said, If your species evolves slower, how do you defend your mates? Mostly sarcasm, I said. It's a natural shield, she chuckled. Then I am already defeated. The AI recorded that line and played it back every morning for a week. I nearly spaced it, but somewhere between mockery and laughter, something changed. She began sitting closer. Her tone softened when she called me small human. And once, when the ship drifted through a meteor shower, she reached out and touched my hand. Just for balance, she said. Yet she didn't let go right away. By the time we reached the edge of Zerillian space, I was officially out of excuses. My client had become my co-pilot, my sparring partner, and my favorite argument. She stood at the viewport, eyes reflecting the swirling nebula ahead. We arrive soon, she said quietly. When we do, your duty ends. Right, I said, forcing a grin. Back to being too small to protect you. She glanced over her shoulder, her smile softer now. Perhaps I was mistaken. That's a dangerous admission. She stepped closer. Perhaps, she said again, I prefer danger. And for once, I didn't have a sarcastic reply. When the final hyperspace beacon blinked, the AI announced our arrival. But I barely heard it, because Seraphine was still standing near me, closer than she'd ever been, looking at me with that same impossible glow. Maybe she really didn't need protection. Maybe she just needed someone reckless enough to try anyway. Either way, I was doomed, and I didn't mind at all. When the vigilant eclipse dropped out of hyperspace, the stars rearranged themselves like a deck of glittering cards. Zerillian space shimmered ahead. 3 green moons, a ringed planet the color of honey, and a diplomatic station floating between them like a jewel on a cosmic necklace. Seraphine stood at the viewport with her staff, posture perfect, expression unreadable. I pretended to study the control panel, but mostly studied the way the nebula light played across her face. The ship's AI, of course, noticed. Captain Cade, your ocular tracking suggests distraction. I'm analyzing refractive luminescence, I muttered. You're analyzing her, and at this rate you'll need new pupils. Mute, I said. Silence. Blessed, glowing silence. Seraphine turned. You speak to yourself often. Occupational hazard, I said. When you spend months alone in deep space, you either talk to your ship or marry it. Does it talk back? Only when it's jealous. She considered that for a long moment. I see. I wasn't sure she did, but it sounded better than explaining that my AI liked to insult my dating life. The docking sequence began. Magnetic clamps latched on, the engines sighed, and the ship's hull vibrated as atmosphere equalized. The Xerillian diplomatic hub was immense, rings of glass corridors spinning slowly to mimic gravity. From here it looked peaceful. From her face I could tell it wasn't. You seem tense, I said. War tension lingers, she replied. This treaty could end centuries of conflict, or reignite it. I gave a sympathetic whistle. No pressure, then? She shot me a look that was equal parts disbelief and amusement. Your humor is a shield, and it's holding, I said. Mostly, she smiled barely. Stay near me. Your size may prove useful. Finally, someone appreciates compact design. She didn't laugh, but her lips twitched, and that counted as victory. The airlock opened to a rush of perfumed atmosphere, sweet, heavy, faintly metallic. The station's interior was like walking into the inside of a gemstone. Crystalline walls, floating orbs of light, delegates of every shape and shade drifting by in formal robes. I felt like a wrench in a jewelry store. Seraphine moved through the crowd with regal calm. I trailed behind, doing my best impression of a bodyguard who didn't know which end of his blaster was forward. A tall, violet-skinned Xerillian approached. Warden Vey, he said with a bow. You bring a human. How quaint. Seraphine's tone stayed cool. He is my escort. Truly? The delegate looked me up and down. He seems fragile, I grinned. That's what pirates say right before I ruin their day. The delegate's brows arched. Brave or foolish? Usually both, I said. Keeps things interesting. Seraphine hid her mouth behind her hand, but her shoulders shook slightly. I decided to count that as a laugh. We spent the next few hours in meetings that felt longer than the lifespan of a black hole. Words like accord, non-aggression, and quantum demilitarization floated through the air. I nodded at random intervals to look important. Seraphine, meanwhile, radiated authority. At one point, she leaned over and whispered, You are falling asleep. I'm conserving energy. For what? In case diplomacy fails and we need to run. She smiled without looking at me. You truly are an unusual human. Thank you. I practice. By the end of the summit's first day, my brain was soup. Seraphine retreated to her assigned quarters, a suite with floating lamps and a view of the rings. I followed to deliver a report, mostly to make sure she didn't disappear into thin air like a glowing magician again. She poured a drink from a crystal decanter, green liquids swirling like nebula gas. It is traditional to toast allies, she said, offering a glass. What's in it? Essence of the lunar bloom, I sniffed. Smells like someone weaponized perfume. It enhances truthfulness. Oh, that's dangerous. Only if you have something to hide. I took a cautious sip. It burned like honesty. She raised her glass. To unlikely guardians. To tall women who underestimate them, I said. We drank. The room spun slightly, whether from the drink or her smile, hard to tell. She set her staff aside and studied me. Your species fascinates me, Ryan Cade. You fight without claws, command ships made of fragile metal, and survive by wit. It's a full-time job. Tell me, why did you become a pilot? I shrugged. I like the stars. They don't judge. Ah, she said softly. But they do burn. That line hung between us like a third glass of lunar bloom. Suddenly, the station alarms blared. Red lights flashed. The calm shimmer shattered. Unauthorized vessel approaching, the AI announced from my wrist comm. Weapons active. Seraphine's expression hardened. Pirates. They seek to sabotage the treaty. I jumped up. Guess it's my turn to be useful. She retrieved her staff. Stay behind me. Not this again, I said. I'm supposed to protect you, remember? You are too small. Let's test that theory. She gave me a look halfway between irritation and admiration. Very well. Prove it! The next 30 minutes were a blur of chaos. The pirates, a pack of mercenaries in patched armor, breached the docking ring. Seraphine unleashed blinding arcs of energy from her staff. I covered the flanks with blaster fire. At one point, a plasma bolt grazed my shoulder and she spun instantly, fury flashing across her features. Are you harmed? Just a scratch. Her glow intensified. They will regret it. Appreciate the sentiment, but maybe don't vaporize the station. Fine, she said, eyes narrowing. Partial vaporization. When the dust settled, the pirates were unconscious, the station secure, and I was slumped against the bulkhead grinning like an idiot. Seraphine knelt beside me, her voice low. You risked yourself. That's kind of my thing. You are reckless. You noticed. She touched my injured shoulder, and a faint warmth spread through it. The pain faded. You heal strangely fast. Must be all the coffee. She didn't laugh this time. Instead, she whispered, perhaps I was wrong. About what? You are not too small to protect me. I looked up at her glowing eyes and said, Told you. Compact design? She shook her head, smiling softly. You never stop jesting. Only when it works. It works, she admitted. The treaty delegates praised her bravery, the station resumed normal rotation, and for the first time in days, things were quiet. Seraphine insisted I rest, but I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying her voice, her laugh, that moment when she'd said, you are not too small. I found myself wandering back to the viewport. Stars drifted by, silent, indifferent, ancient. Then her reflection appeared beside mine. You should rest, she said gently. I could say the same. I do not need sleep. Everyone needs something. She studied me again, that same piercing gaze that stripped away pretense. And what do you need, Ryan Cade? I hesitated. Maybe someone who doesn't treat me like I'm made of spare parts. Her expression softened. Then perhaps we are both searching. For a moment, we just stood there, side by side, watching the rings glitter around the planet like a promise neither of us could name. Later, as the Eclipse prepared for departure, the AI pinged me privately. Captain, I've logged your heroism in the mission report. Appreciate it. Shall I also log that you are infatuated with your client? Delete that. Already backed up to 3 locations. Traitor. Just ensuring future historians understand your emotional malfunction, I groaned. Space hated me twice now. Before we undocked, Seraphine turned to me. The Council requests my return to Xerilia. But the journey is perilous. I raised a brow. You need an escort? I need you, she said simply. You have a way of surviving the impossible, I smiled. And you have a way of making the impossible look good. She rolled her eyes. Gracefully, of course. You cannot help yourself? Not even a little. She laughed then, a genuine sound bright as a nova. Very well, human. One more voyage, and just like that I was doomed all over again and perfectly fine with it. The vigilant Eclipse slid away from the Xerillian station like a cat that had just stolen something shiny. Behind us, the diplomatic hub dwindled into a pinprick of light. Ahead, open space waited, untrustworthy, beautiful, and full of things that probably wanted to shoot us. Seraphine stood at the helm beside me, hair glowing faintly in the darkened cockpit. She had that serene, warrior-philosopher look again, the one that made me feel like I'd shown up to a sword fight with a rubber spoon. I was supposed to be piloting, but mostly I was watching the reflection of the stars in her eyes. Navigation set, I said, hoping my voice sounded more professional than besotted. Destination, Xerilia Prime. ETA 16 hours, assuming nothing tries to kill us. That is an optimistic assumption, she murmured. That's me. A fountain of optimism wrapped in anxiety. The ship's AI chimed in. Captain, may I remind you that statistically— No, you may not, I interrupted. I'd rather not know the odds. Understood. Would you prefer soothing background music or recordings of whales panicking? Whales, I said. At least they understand me. Seraphine gave me that look again, the one halfway between curiosity and pity. Does your machine mock you often? Constantly, I said. It's how we bond. I see, she said slowly. You humans have interesting definitions of friendship. You should see our dating apps. For a few hours, we cruised in silence, if you could call the hum of engines and the occasional AI insult silence. Seraphine spent the time calibrating her staff and meditating. I spent mine trying to pretend I wasn't sneaking glances at her. Every time I looked away, she seemed to notice anyway. Your heartbeat changes when you lie, she said suddenly. I nearly dropped my coffee bulb. You can hear that? I can feel it, she said, eyes closed. Your ship vibrates with your pulse. That's either poetic or terrifying. Both, she replied softly. 6 hours into the journey, the sensors screamed. A pirate frigate decloaked dead ahead, sleek, angular, bristling with guns. Because of course it did. Space has a sense of humor. Unknown vessel approaching, the AI announced helpfully. May I suggest panic? Seraphine straightened. I recognize that signal. Korath raiders. They hunt relics. And wardens. Perfect, I muttered. Nothing like being hunted on a first date. She shot me a glance. Date? Figure of speech? Totally professional life-threatening crisis. The frigate hailed us. A gruff alien face appeared on screen, all tusks and bad dental choices. Warden Vey, surrender your artifact and your companion. Companion? I whispered. I didn't even get promoted to partner. Seraphine ignored me. You will have neither, she said calmly. The pirate growled. Then you will have vacuum, the transmission cut. Lasers charged. I grabbed the controls. Hold on to something expensive. The battle that followed was chaos with rhythm. I dove the ship through debris fields. She redirected energy with her staff, turning plasma bolts into harmless flares. The AI screamed technical advice I ignored. At one point, a missile clipped our wing, spinning us hard enough that gravity forgot what direction meant. Seraphine braced herself against the console, eyes blazing. Evasive pattern Theta 4. I only know Theta 3. Then improvise. I'm human. We invented improvisation. She flashed me a wild grin. Prove it. Challenge accepted. I rolled the Eclipse through the pirate's firing line, looped behind him, and dumped our entire engine output into the starboard thrusters. The ship shuddered, groaned, and then, miraculously, the pirate frigate drifted directly into its own torpedo. The explosion bloomed like fireworks. When the light faded, we were alone again. Seraphine exhaled, finally relaxing. Impressive, she said. See? Compact design, excellent maneuverability. She shook her head, smiling. You risk everything on instinct. It's my brand. Foolish. Effective. She paused. Attractive, I blinked. Sorry, could you repeat that for the flight log? Do not push your luck, Captain. After the fight, we limped into a nearby asteroid field for repairs. The damage wasn't fatal, but it wasn't pretty either. I rolled up my sleeves and started patching conduits while she recalibrated power flow with quiet efficiency. At one point, sparks showered across the deck, and I swore loudly enough to make the AI cough politely. Seraphine looked up. Your language contains many creative invocations. Years of practice, I said. Swearing is a survival tool. On my world, she said thoughtfully, we chant hymns in crisis. Same thing. Just louder and less holy, she laughed. An actual laugh this time, bright and unguarded. I begin to suspect your humor is contagious. Careful, I said. It's incurable. We spent the night cycle anchored among the asteroids, watching fragments of rock drift past like lazy comets. Seraphine joined me in the observation dome, her staff resting beside her. For once, she wasn't glowing. She looked almost human in the dim light. You could have let me fight alone, she said quietly, and miss out on a good explosion? Never. I mean it, she insisted. You risked your life for me. Yeah, well, I said, rubbing my shoulder. I'm kind of getting used to it. She studied me, eyes unreadable. You make light of everything. It's better than making dark of it. Perhaps. She leaned closer. But sometimes darkness has depth. I swallowed. Is that a Xyrillian proverb? No, just observation. For a heartbeat, neither of us spoke. Then the AI's voice broke in. Captain, your oxygen levels are rising. Possibly due to heavy breathing. Mute! I shouted. Seraphine bit her lip to keep from laughing. Later, while I pretended to check engine diagnostics, she approached holding a small, crystalline sphere. "This is a memory orb," she said. "It records impressions of those nearby. I wish to capture the essence of this journey. Sounds poetic. It is practical," she said. "But perhaps also poetic." She placed the orb on the console. It glowed faintly, pulsing in time with the ship's hum. "Speak," she said. Hi, orb," I said awkwardly. "This is Ryan Cade, professional pilot, part-time target practice dummy." Seraphine rolled her eyes. "Try sincerity." I took a breath. "All right. If this thing records truth, then here it is. Space is cold, politics are worse, and somehow you make both worth it." The orb flared bright, locking in the sound. Seraphine stared at me, surprised. Then, very softly, she said, "You hide behind words, but your truth is not small. Guess I fooled the orb. Or perhaps it sees what you cannot. Which is, that you already protect me." The silence after that was warm enough to melt an asteroid. Hours later, we were en route again, engines humming smoothly. The tension between us had changed. Less banter, more electricity humming under the words. Even the AI stayed suspiciously quiet, as if afraid to break whatever strange gravity held us in orbit. Finally, Seraphine spoke. "When we reach Zerilia, our paths will separate." "Yeah," I said too quickly. "Duty calls. You could remain. Teach our pilots. Bring your—" sarcasm. I smiled faintly. "You'd get tired of me inside a week." "Unlikely," she said. Then, more softly, "But perhaps it is better not to test fate." I looked at her, this glowing warrior, this impossible woman who could crush planets and still tilt her head like she was puzzling out a joke. And for once, I didn't have a punchline. Instead, I said, "You ever get tired of being right?" "Often," she said, "but rarely when it matters." The ship's console beeped. "Captain, we're approaching Xyrillian orbit." "Prepare for descent." I leaned back, exhaling. "Guess this is it." Seraphine turned to me, her expression unreadable again. "You saved my mission. You risked your life twice, all in a day's work. Still," she said, "I owe you a debt. Then buy me coffee, or the Xyrillian equivalent." Her lips curved. "On my world, gratitude is expressed differently." "Oh? How differently?" "You will see," she said, and for the first time, I genuinely wasn't sure if I was in trouble or luck. As the planet filled the viewport, emerald oceans, silver continents, I caught my reflection beside hers. Human and alien, side by side, ridiculous and somehow perfect. The AI must have noticed, too. "Captain, for the record, your heart rate is again—" "Mute." "Already predicted." Seraphine laughed quietly. "You two are like siblings." "I'd prefer therapy. Perhaps you need both," she said. "Probably." When the ship finally descended into the glowing atmosphere of Xyrilia Prime, I realized something terrifying. I didn't want the mission to end. Somewhere between insults, plasma fire, and cosmic drinks, the job had become personal, and maybe that was what scared me most, that a man who lived his life running from gravity had finally found some. As the landing struts extended, Seraphine glanced at me. "You will stay until the treaty is ratified?" "Wouldn't miss it," I said. "And after that?" She smiled faintly. "After that, we see what the stars decide." The eclipse touched down with a gentle thud, and I couldn't tell whether it was the planet shaking or just my nerves. Somewhere deep in the ship's systems, the AI recorded a final line in the log. "Captain Ryan Cade, small human, large problem, has officially entered orbit around something far more dangerous than gravity." And for once, I couldn't disagree. The ship drifted in orbit over the newborn star, bathing everything in gold. The panels hummed quietly, almost purring, like the universe itself had decided to nap after all the chaos. Taryn stood at the helm, hands in his pockets, watching the swirl of plasma through the viewport. He wasn't wearing armor anymore, just a jacket he'd patched together from ship fabric and what used to be part of Zira's ceremonial cape. She'd pretended not to notice. It smelled faintly of the strange metallic spice that followed her everywhere. Behind him, soft footsteps echoed, followed by that unmistakable voice, smooth, confident, and slightly exasperated. "You're still looking at the fireball, aren't you?" Zira asked. He smirked. "Well, it's not every day a guy watches a son being born. Usually my big achievement is finding socks that match." She glided closer. "You did save an entire quadrant from gravitational collapse." "Yeah," he said. "That too." Her reflection shimmered beside him in the glass, green skin aglow in the sunlight, silver hair falling like a comet trail down her shoulders. She leaned one hand on the console beside him, the same way she used to when giving orders, but now it looked more like a habit she didn't want to break. "I was serious about you staying," she said softly. Taryn glanced over. "Staying? As in permanently? I thought I was the temporary bodyguard/pet. Her brow arched. "You are insufferable. And you love that." Zira sighed, though the corners of her mouth betrayed her. "You are lucky the council believes you're my diplomatic advisor now. Otherwise, they'd have vaporized you for speaking to me like that." He grinned. "So, I'm basically your forbidden boyfriend with health benefits." She blinked. "Health benefits?" "Yeah, like not getting vaporized." That earned him a laugh, sharp, melodic, and genuine. She leaned forward on the console until their faces were inches apart, the sunlight burning gold halos in her eyes. "Taryn," she said, voice lower now, "you realize I once called you too small to protect me." "Yeah," he said. "And now?" "Now," she said, her expression softening. "You're the only one I trust to." For a second, neither spoke. Outside, the infant star flared like a heartbeat. Inside, the ship's lights flickered, catching her silver gaze and his very human hesitation. He cleared his throat. "So are we going to stand here staring at cosmic fireworks, or—" "Finish your sentence carefully," she warned. He smirked. "Or have a long talk about emotional intimacy and interspecies diplomacy." Her lips twitched. "You are impossible. And you're addicted to it." The next few days blurred into a mix of strange domesticity and cosmic bureaucracy. Taryn tried to act professional while alien dignitaries kept whispering about the green empress's little human. Zira ignored the gossip, but sometimes when she passed him in the corridors, she'd brush her hand against his arm, just enough for his heart to trip over itself. They worked side by side repairing the ship's systems. She commanded fleets. He recalibrated shields. Together they argued, laughed, and occasionally insulted each other's species for fun. "You humans," Zira teased one evening, "still think mating rituals begin with humor." Taryn shot back. "Well, you aliens start yours by threatening planetary annihilation. Seems like both methods get results." Her laughter filled the room again, and he couldn't help thinking it was the best sound in the galaxy. When the council finally summoned them for debriefing, Taryn stood a step behind her throne, hands clasped like a soldier but eyes full of mischief. The alien ministers debated in 11 languages, and one of them muttered about the humans' inappropriate proximity to royal appendages. Taryn leaned forward and whispered, "They mean your elbows, right?" She nearly lost her composure. By the time the meeting ended, Zira had secured peace for 3 systems, silenced her rivals, and somehow managed not to blush through the entire thing. When the last of the delegates left, she slumped back and let out a sigh only he was supposed to hear. "You are a menace," she said. "Yeah," he said, "but I'm your menace." She stared at him, the corners of her mouth curving up ever so slightly. "Don't ever let that go to your head." "Oh, it's already there. Probably taking up permanent residence." Later, in the ship's observation deck, they stood in silence again. The galaxy outside looked like spilled paint, brilliant, chaotic, alive. He turned to her. "So what now? Do I keep guarding you? Or do I finally get to go home and sleep on a bed that doesn't try to read my DNA? Her voice softened. "You could go. You've earned your freedom." He nodded slowly. "And if I stay? Then you'd better get used to being held on to," she said quietly. "Because I don't plan on letting go." That line hit harder than any plasma blast. He stared at her, and for once he didn't joke, didn't deflect. He just stepped closer until the space between them was filled with starlight. "Guess being small has its perks," he murmured. She smiled. "I suppose it does." The ship drifted toward the light of 1,000 suns. Two silhouettes stood side by side, one human, one alien, both ridiculous, stubborn, and inseparable. Somewhere in the vast, indifferent void, they'd found a reason to stay, and if the universe had a sense of humor, which, judging by them, it definitely did, then maybe love wasn't the biggest joke after all. If you laughed, smiled, or briefly considered falling for a sarcastic space hero yourself, don't drift off yet. The galaxy's full of bigger trouble, sharper banter, and brighter stars. Stick around for the next mission, because when she holds on, he's definitely not letting go.